So we have several other attendees for the record. Could everybody please identify themselves?
Calvin Pauley. John Berger.
Chris Hicks.
Tom Cooper.
I'm sorry, what was the second?
Tom Cooper.
Cooper.
But I don't think you're supposed to be allowed to ask us to identify ourselves unless we want to speak. Citizens are allowed to attend meetings like this anonymously, so you might want to get that down, Mr. Lembke.
Okay.
Do you understand that? What you just did is illegal, so I just would like you to show me at some point in time that you care about the law.
Anybody that wants to address the board?
Did you get that or not?
You have 5 minutes to address the board.
Last time I was here, I did a record request after that meeting. As we remember, Mr. Lembke asked me for legal advice on what statutes allowed you or didn't allow you to reject the designation of treasurer. I've done some research into that, and I found that you don't have any right to reject the designation of treasurer. Not only by statute, if you go check 351710D1B, only the Secretary of State has a right to reject the designation of treasurer, and it only actually refers to PACs and PCEs as being the authority to reject the designation of treasurer. So perhaps Mr. Lembke, after I get done talking, could talk about the legal research he and Brian Schreiber did as he checks his watch to make sure he cuts me off right in 5 minutes. But in the record request, I found that the response that I got, it found that you guys have, and members of this board have, special relationships with certain people to provide them apparently with records immediately upon my filing, that they get it sent out, for example, to certain people in the Republican Party. It also appears that Joe Eaker, who's the treasurer of the Clermont County Republican Central and Executive Committee, has a special relationship with Brian Schreiber and puts in writing the legal advice that he got from Brian Schreiber on how to go about things to try to get me. It also is great to know that one of the board members, Mr. Grant, is very eager to figure out a way that I can not be 7-0 at the Ohio Election Commission anymore, and puts that in writing. Because although he tells me he's for clean campaign finance, so he wants to praise me for my work on Gene Schmidt, Alan Freeman, etc., apparently he's got a special focus on if a citizen does very well before the Ohio Election Commission, he wants to knock him down a notch, because let's face the reality is there's a vendetta here that goes on, and there's actions that go on in terms of the relationships and the communications that are wholly inappropriate, just like Mr. Lembke asking people to identify themselves to be able to sit in a public meeting. How am I doing on time, Mr. Lembke? Since you keep checking your watch. So
You have 3 minutes, sir.
So the other thing I want to note is I got the June 4th letter that you emailed to me. Given the current climate, if you guys have any specific questions about a campaign finance or any campaign finance report I've filed or been a part in, please ask me. But fishing expeditions, under the guise of acting like it's official or it's important, that's not going to be something I respond to. It's inappropriate. It is, given the communications that have been released in the record request I got back, some of your guys' behavior is inappropriate and should be unacceptable to this body. If there's any issue with me, what I would encourage you to do is to send me a letter specifically with what the issue is in a campaign finance report that you seek information on, like a mathematical error or something like that, a missing receipt, those kind of things. Otherwise, I would encourage you to refer whatever you have an issue with to the Ohio Elections Commission, where at least I can have some semblance of due process. There's no due process here. When it comes to that, Mr. Lembke, just as another aside, when it comes to these issues of denying a designation of treasurer, apart from the statute, I did some research into other boards of elections. So Clark County has 2 active Republican Party entities, both of which file campaign finance reports and are recognized by the Board of Elections. Okay, Summit County had a situation, I don't know that anybody's had a situation on a new filing, but on a filing where a name was similar, okay, and that already existed, they had a hearing on it, unlike you guys, okay, that never have a hearing on things, and they determined in their hearing that they didn't have the authority to do anything about it. Only the Secretary of State could. And I want to throw in one other thing. If you go research what Legislative Services Commission said about that statute 351710D1B, in their paper on it before it was enacted, they called that statute, if challenged in court, would be found unconstitutional. And that's why you might find that the Secretary of State, as I see in the communications, doesn't want to put anything in writing, because the statute in question LSC, before it was ever put into law, identified it as being unconstitutional. So I thank you for the time. Hopefully I didn't go over. But I wonder, Mr. Lembke, since this was on your plate last time, you asked me to go research the statutes. Maybe you can address whether you researched any statutes or any basis you found for your actions.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
So no.
Anybody else wish to address the board for public participation? Okay, thank you both.
What a
Moving on,
clown.
we had a chance to look at our bill.